Twist's departure from FaZe Clan is one of the most unexpected news of the past year. The guys had won a few tournaments and set an impressive win streak, and in general, they were close to establishing an era for themselves. But Russell still left for Liquid, shocking the CS community. In Kerrigan's words, Frozen was the first candidate to fill his shoes. But why? Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, because you're watching CYBERSHOKE, and today we'll tell you the story of Frozen. We'll try to understand why FaZe wanted to sign him so badly, discuss his removal from ESL tournaments, and how he made it to FPL in the first place at only 13 years old. Hey, if you want to get better in CS2, come train with us at CYBERSHOKE. We offer a great variety of game modes, each of them helping you to develop your skills. Besides popular modes like DM and Retake, we have tons of fun stuff. For instance, take a look at the Clutch mode. We developed it in 2023 from scratch. Here, you're constantly placed in clutch situations against other players, and you need to play perfectly in order to win. This mode is a spin-off to Retake, but with an emphasis on helping you to stay calm even in the most difficult of game situations. And Clutch is just one example of what CYBERSHOKE has to offer. Check it out via the link in the description, and don't forget to visit the Missions tab, where premium players can earn prizes by completing simple tasks on our servers. David Frozen Czernienski was born in 2002 in northern Slovakia, in a small town called Liptovsky Mikuláš. When David was 8, his older brother introduced him to Counter-Strike for the first time, and he instantly fell in love with it. Frozen started playing, to put it mildly, a lot. But his parents were pretty chill about it, allowing their son to do what he wanted, as long as his grades were good. David says that his father is also a gamer, so he didn't have any of those negative stereotypes about it. Moreover, there was actually a period in Frozen's career where he only had one topic to talk about with his dad: Counter-Strike. They could discuss esports for hours, and his dad had his own opinions about how his son played and his whole journey in Counter-Strike. At just 10 years old, Frozen joined his first team. He was more interested in having good teamwork and winning tournaments rather than dropping 40 frags in pubs. It only took him 3 years to make a name for himself on the Czechoslovak scene. Competing on local LANs, he was easily beating opponents who started playing CS long before Frozen was even born. So it wasn't long until he showed his parents his first prize money. When David turned just 13, he was already invited to a decent team called Neophyte. With Neophyte, Frozen visited the biggest local tournament with a prize pool of 70,000 Czech crowns. There, our 13-year-old hero took first place and became the crowd favorite. Here's how he would recall those times. The realization that I can become a pro player came to me at 13 when I won my first LAN, and I'm really grateful for it because I got hungry to win more. Who knows what would happen if I didn't win that first tournament? Sadly, Frozen couldn't stay in Neophyte. The teammates acknowledged David's talent, but they couldn't take part in many tournaments due to his age, so they had to say goodbye. But Frozen quickly found a new home for himself. He was invited to a Czechoslovakian team, Ecstatis. These guys weren't bothered by his age and were willing to make some compromises in order to sign such a promising star. In just 2 months after joining Ecstatis, Frozen qualified into the FaceIt Pro League. David made a lot of noise that day because no one could believe that you could make it into FPL at just 13 years old. To this day, he still holds the record as the youngest player ever to qualify for the European FPL. Frozen made a huge bet on FaceIt and spent most of his free time there. In some months, he even earned some prizes. For instance, he became the 8th best player in November and got $1,000 for it. Of course, David also trained with his team, but Ecstatis couldn't even get into the top 100 in HLTV rankings. In the next year, though, 2017, the results became much better. After making a couple of good replacements, the Czechs became a pretty decent Tier 2 team. David remembers that it was this time that he started to play a lot of pracs against other teams in the world, and he was happy about it. Ecstatis even managed to qualify for the Katowice event, beating Flipside and Vega Squadron, but the TOs canceled their win because of Frozen's age. Here's how David describes that period. "Here, I feel like I'm at home. We've got some great chemistry and really support each other. I'm sure that we're ready to compete in Europe." All this time, Ecstatis were playing without a sponsor, but in April 2017, they received a pretty interesting offer. Alza, a local hardware store chain, started to finance the guys, and they were very proud of the fact that now they had real contracts with real salaries. And at about the same time, one local newspaper released an interview with our hero. Here's how it started. "Although David is only 14, he already has a full-time job as the youngest professional gamer from the Czechoslovak region. He trains for 8 hours a day and goes to middle school." The interview was big. but pretty surface level, because the audience of that newspaper wasn't at all familiar with Counter-Strike. But still, it was pretty funny. For instance, David said that some days he can spend up to 12 hours in front of a PC while enjoying an energy drink. In response, he got a little lecture about the danger of energy drinks at his age. Ecstatis were improving at such a fast pace that they reached the very top of the Tier 2 level in the second half of 2017. They had won many online tournaments, took first place on the cross-border LAN, and even qualified for the European Minor. The guys were doing great, and Frozen finished that year with a 1.28 rating. Coming back from the holidays, Ecstatis continued to show great CS. They finished second at the ASEA Premier Finals and reached the semifinals on the ASEA Global Challenge. But sadly, in the summer of 2018, the organization had to disband its team. Their only sponsor broke the contract, and Ecstatis couldn't pay the Tier 2 salaries out of their own pockets. So the team went adrift. 2 players immediately left the roster, and here we go again. Hello, top 100 in HLTV ratings and doing Tier 3 tournaments. Frozen, in turn, became better and better individually, and oftentimes finished FPL seasons at a very high placing. Why didn't he get an invite to a stronger team, you may ask? Well, actually, he did get some. For instance, David was offered a spot in the new European roster of Imperial with Nexa and Esperanto, but Frozen refused to even play pracs with them because he dreamed of doing all of this with his homeland team. He said, "I wanted to create a team that was able to achieve something in European CS, but some players gave up at the very beginning." He's talking about Zero there, who, as it turns out, had promised to join David's team, but when it came to training, left. In January 2019, Ecstatis announced that they're gonna disband because some players, not just Frozen, started to receive good offers from Europe. David joined No Chance team and had some pretty unusual feedback about his new teammates. "My teammates are kinda sloppy in a good way. Even if we're losing 14-1, these guys will still be calm and quiet." That No Chance roster was looking pretty good, but the guys still didn't reach their full potential. Why? Because, well, in 2 months, our hero was contacted by Kerrigan, who offered him to join MOUZ. Obviously, Frozen agreed. Although the new MOUZ team wasn't solid Tier 1 material from the get-go, the organization was still pretty demanding to the players. David recalls that period of his career as a very challenging time because he had to find a balance between school and CS.
I mean, my day is starting like I'm going to school, then I come back and I'm playing CS until I go sleep, and that's it basically. It's kind of hard, but yeah, I can't do anything else until I finish the school. That's it.
Frozen even got into some trouble in school because teachers didn't understand what he was doing. They thought he was some kind of a fool who was wasting his youth on some silly games, and that was kind of hard on him. David says that it was a very draining process and that he's grateful to his parents for believing in him the whole journey through. By the way, it turned out that Kerrigan personally picked Frozen among other candidates, and he took a big risk by signing such a young player. Fortunately, that paid off. In March 2019, the longest chapter of David's career had begun. He joined MOUZ. You can learn more about that roster if you want by watching our video about Kerrigan. The Slovakian beast quickly proved his worth. Yeah, Frozen wasn't the main star of the team since they had Rops, but he still had some huge stats and was a great teammate overall. There's just one strange thing about that time. In 2020, when MOUZ failed at a few tournaments in a row, they decided it was time to replace someone, and Frozen was surprisingly the first candidate to be kicked. But why, you might ask? Well, probably because lockdown was a pretty hard time for David. He says, "I got used to playing a lot of LANs, and it was hard to break that rhythm. Now I had to sit at home, and it felt like I was in prison." Luckily, MOUZ decided not to kick him, but in 2021, their team went through a big reshuffle. Kerrigan left for FaZe Clan, and the guys signed Dexter to fill his shoes. Frozen was still a very young player in desperate need of a strong mentor, and the new Australian IGL couldn't really teach him anything he didn't already know. That was a pretty minor setback, but still a struggle for our hero. But overall, David finished 2021 with a 1.16 rating, which made him the 21st best player of that year. Unfortunately, MOUZ had to go through some big changes again. At the start of 2022, they signed Torshi, Acor, and NBK, and it got Frozen thinking about whether he was right to have renewed his contract with MOUZ. He thought about it a lot and considered joining some other teams, but in the end decided to stay. David was very positive about his new teammates. Particularly, he was amazed by NBK and how much impact he had on the team. But when Frozen got asked about his expectations from that roster, he decided to pass on the question. It sounded like David didn't really believe in the team anymore. So it was no surprise that in a very short time, MOUZ said goodbye to NBK. Time was passing by, and MOUZ had cycled through a lot of different players, but Frozen has remained consistent over all these years. In 2022, he was named the 17th best player of the year, and once again set a new record for himself. So 2 months ago, when he joined FaZe, it was no surprise to anyone. That move was a very expected result after 4 years of hard work. Obviously, Frozen didn't have any problems with fitting into Kerrigan's structure once again, and currently, he's one of the best Counter-Strike players, and it wouldn't surprise anyone if he's seen lifting a major trophy in the next few years.